how Jason Calacanis took $100,000, turned it into $100 million, and became the category king of Silicon Valley angel investing. All right. Hey ho, let's go. Welcome to this fantastic episode of Legends and Losers. Man, am I ever glad you're here. Hal Elrod calls us one of the best podcasts of all time. And Sabrina Horn says we are the podcast Silicon Valley needs. No matter how you think of us, welcome to the show where we aspire to have authentic dialogues with people about how you design a legendary business and a legendary life. Well, today we hack one of the greatest minds in Silicon Valley, angel investing. You could very much argue that Jason is the category king of Silicon Valley angel investing. And I'm not sure anybody would argue with him about it. I'll tell you a little bit more about him in a second. First, I thought it'd be fun to share a story I had recently. If you're a regular listener to Legends and Losers, you know that I'm on tour with our friends at NetSuite, and which has been great. I did the first one recently in San Diego, the first one that I did anyway. And also speaking at this event was NBA legend, Hall of Famer champion, Bill Walton. And now you probably, like me, have met some of your heroes and some famous people and maybe some athletes and so forth. And in general, this may sound crazy, but I'm not always enthusiastic about meeting these folks because particularly ones I really admire, because if they turn out to be, shitty in person, it sort of wrecks everything after that. So I'd sort of rather have them be in a positive place in my mind, not knowing what they're really like, so to speak. Anyway, so I'm always curious when I meet famous people. And so Bill Walton is essentially everything and more you would wish him to be in person. Now, I didn't grow up watching basketball because I grew up in Canada, but I, of course, know who Bill is. I remember his playing days and, of course, remember him as a longtime commentator. And when you go to do a speaking event with Bill, I met him at sort of the preparation session we did before we got started. And he walks in the room as very clear that it's Bill, because he's about 12 feet tall. So he's very tall and lanky. He still looks fit as shit. I don't know exactly how tall he is, but I mean, he would be I think he's more than 6'9". He might be 6'10" or 11 somewhere. I mean, he is a very tall dude. But he comes over and he introduces himself. He says, "Hi, I'm Bill." And I can't help but laugh. Yeah. Bill, you need no introduction. He says, and then he turns and looks at me. He says, "Yeah." He says, "Well, I want you to know I'm Luke's dad." And that was kind of just the way he behaved from that point on. I mean, he was as humble, as affable, as genuine, as happy, as funny. Man, is he ever funny. And when he's giving his talk, he can't go more than 2 minutes or so without some kind of funny zinger about something. And he tells amazing stories. And I got a chance to spend some time with him and a few others after the speaking event, and shared a meal and so forth. Anyway, long story longer, Bill Walton was absolutely unbelievable. And I wanted to shout out to him and say thank you for an incredible evening, and Jason Maynard and everybody else at NetSuite for an incredible event in San Diego. And I got this great Bill Walton quote that maps to the theme of our show. He says, quote, "I can say something I never would have said when I was a player, that I'm a better person because of my failures and disgraces." Bill Walton. So thanks, Bill. All right, speaking of NetSuite, September 20th, Denver, September 26th, Toronto, September 27th, beautiful New York, and November 9th. To get your VIP executive invitation to any one of those dates, and there are other dates available, I just won't be at those other ones. Those are the ones that I'll be there at, speaking about category design, growth, signing copies of Play Bigger, and maybe even having a cocktail or two. So if you want to come to any of those events, send email to blackhole@legendsandlosers.com. with the date of the event, or just NetSuite Next Ready Business Tour, and we'll get you set up. All right. Jason Calacanis. He's controversial. He's engaging. He's captivating. He's very, very insightful. He's an extraordinary communicator. He's boastful, and we talk about that a little bit, and I think in a very fun way. Jason is clearly the category king of angel investing in Silicon Valley. His podcast is no question a legendary podcast. It's called This Week in Startups, and it's a riveting show about how to create legendary businesses and what's going on in Silicon Valley, and he does an incredible job. And as you'll hear in our dialogue, I am over the top, frankly, about his new book, Angel, How to Invest in Technology Startups. Timeless advice from an angel investor who turned 100,000 into 100 million. And it's a spectacular read. I recommend it to everybody. Read this book, Jason Calacanis, Angel. And here's our dialogue on Legends and Losers. So, Jason, I got to tell you, I have read your book.
Thank you.
And here's what I think.
I'm bracing for impact. You know, I'm very sensitive.
Yeah, I can tell, believe me. I listened to your podcast enough to know how deeply sensitive you are.
You could hurt my feelings deeply here and make me question my entire sense of being.
Yeah, well,
be gentle with me.
If I do that, I've had a complete failure in my ability to communicate, because this book is fucking legendary. And
wow.
And way more fucking legendary than your average legendary business books. You know, I, like you, read a lot of business books, and I'm lucky enough to have some great authors in my life and who join on Legends and Losers and stuff like that. But your book, the first question I really want to ask you, which is actually one of the questions people asked us a lot about Play Bigger, which is, I'm sure maybe there's some secrets you withheld. I don't know. You could tell me, but I've been doing this for 30 fucking years. You put all the shit on the table in this book.
Yeah. So that is the best fucking review I've ever fucking got. So thank you.
I literally, reading your book, I'm going, yes, fuck, yeah. Tell him, Jason, tell him.
So what I tried to do is to be as candid as I could possibly be, and to give every secret I have. So the reason why you feel like, wow, did you leave any secret out, is because no, I put it all out on the court. And the reason I decided to put it all out on the court is because as an angel investor, which I've done for 6 years, I think a decade's enough for an angel investor. Now, I'm not saying I'm not going to do decade 2 as an angel investor. I might. But most people who hit a home run like I have, and I've hit 6 in angel investing, and I hit 2 other home runs outside of angel investing, maybe 3. So I'm at like 8 or 9 home runs as a home run hitter. And so the question is, when do you decide, hey, that's enough championships, that's enough unicorns, that's enough, sales? And I've been doing a lot of introspection about that. I'm 46, and so if I do this for another 4 years, that would be another 150 companies. It would put me at 300 companies invested in, and I have 6 unicorns now, and a bunch of startups worth 100 million plus. So if I can get another 6 of those over the finish line, or invest in another 150 and get another 6, that'd give me 12 unicorns and 300 swings at bat. It essentially has not happened in the history of Silicon Valley. So I'm looking to be the GOAT. I'd like to be the greatest of all time. And I think what people don't realize in me giving over my playbook is 2 things. One, the playbook's always changing and evolving. So to give you a playbook for what worked in the NBA when Patrick Ewing and Michael Jordan and Hakeem Olajuwon and Shaquille O'Neal were winning championships, being in the championships, those players were playing a fundamentally different game of basketball than the Warriors are playing now, or Houston or Oklahoma City. The game has completely changed. So if you were to steal Pat Riley's playbook from the 90s and use it today, it would not work. So I'm a student of history. I read 2 or 3 books a month. I try to hit. I listen to two. I try to read one. So I do Audible for two, and then I read one in print. Actually, I like the hardcover print experience too. I keep one by my nightstand. So if you're a student of history, you know any playbook is going to have some fundamentals in it, and then there's going to be some things that change. So I think in my book, even in my book, 100% of it's accurate now, but in 5 years, maybe 2/3 of it will be timeless, and 1/3 of it will be maybe need to be updated. So there's that. And then the second thing is it's a collaborative sport. What I do is not about me beating the other angels necessarily. Uh, I just need to have secure my spot on the cap table of a high growth company. For me to secure my little tiny sliver of equity, my little 10 basis points to 10%, and that's a big range, but that's the 100x range I'm looking for in terms of ownership. Well, I only need to be in people's top 50 investors. I'm way past being in people's top 50 in the fantasy draft of angel investing. So there's no way I'm getting left off of a cap table unless somebody really hates me. And there's 5% of the audience probably really dislikes me. So I'm probably not going to get left off a cap table. So I put it all out there. And you picked up on that. A number of people have picked up on that. And they've also picked up on the fact that I speak in very candid terms. It's not a get rich quick book. It's a get rich and powerful and smart and skillful slowly and methodically until people cannot ignore you book. If you want to go on a 10-year journey to be an ass kicker, then read the book. If you want to go on a 10-month journey, it's not the book for you. Go tune into an infomercial that will sell you some snake oil that you can flip a house overnight and be, Donald Trump, if you, God forbid you wanted to be that. And I'll stay off politics. That's a complete summary of my political comments.
So awesome. I love that you did that, because what I thought the whole time I was going through your book, and by the way, I do listen to books, and I'm a podcast, super consumer. I was long before I started podcasting. That said, this is what I do to books, right? I highlight them. I write notes in them.
Awesome.
I'm dyslexic. And
Me
so
too. Yeah.
Are you really?
Yeah, I have like a mild dyslexia. I mess up specific words, and I have a hard time reading in print. So I'm a more auditory and visual learner than reading. Reading is tough for me, actually. Writing is easy. Reading is hard. It's weird.
Wow. Both
Yeah.
are really hard for me. But I'm curious, as a dyslexic, what advantages do you think you have, both in the way you think and ultimately in the way you're able to express yourself in the written word like you have?
Yeah, well, so what happened to me was when I was younger, I went through an experimental reading and learning school. So I either have mild dyslexia or I was just taught improperly, where it's a debate. And I just, small words, I don't know why, small words and some ability to speak and say certain words, I mess up, like very small words. I can get indefatigable or counterintuitive, but sometimes I'll do some small word and I'll say it wrong. So it's pretty funny. My friends goof on me about it sometimes. But what I had to do was basically I just worked really hard on being a great writer, and I studied great writers, and I studied people who are great interviewers and conversationalists deliberately to become a great podcaster. And if you look at my first 100 episodes versus the last 100, I think you'll see a real difference in that 7-8 year journey of being a better interviewer and a better speaker. You can see that when I do my CNBC hits too, trying to be a more concise speaker for that medium. But writing was where I really was able to fix a lot of my problems, which is I don't worry about spelling. I don't worry about grammar all that much. What I worry about is speaking with so much density of knowledge and with my trademark bluntness that any mistake I make, I have people who can fix. So if I say something and I use than or then with an A or an E and I mess it up constantly,
Who cares?
even though I know the difference, I have people around me. They can fix that shit. I can focus on, hey, what is actually the best advice I can give? What's the best knowledge I can give? And what's the best metaphor I can use to get inside people's heads? And what's the sentence structure I can use that'll make people say, that's a fucking great sentence? Because I try to do that. I try to come up with fucking great sentences or great one-liners that people remember and then will tweet, remember, say to other people, or just get inside their head and percolate. And that's what I'm trying to do, is I'm trying to get inside of people's heads and be that voice in their head that says, Jason said I could do this. Jason said it's possible. Jason said it's going to be hard. And then they hear that in their head over and over again. And maybe it makes them make a change in their life. I don't mean to be all Tony Robbins, but it is my
No,
deliberate goal.
it's true, and it's funny. I recently had the incredible privilege of being on the Ziegler show, and he taught me to sell as a kid. And so as I was going on the show, I was consuming a lot of Ziegler stuff, to kind of bring him back to life in my life in a powerful way to get ready for our dialogue. And, he's got an expression, and I'm paraphrasing, and I'll do a terrible job of his accent, but, he says something like, what you put into your mind is what you get out of your life, right? He says all these things like that. And I think, Jason, what you've done with this book is at least two incredibly legendary things. First of all, you have given all of us, even those of us who've been in this game for a very long time, a template or a model to innovate from. So we no longer have to have a blank sheet of paper called how do we invest in, and in my case, advise, legendary startups. You've given us a place to start. Because before this book, there was figure it out. Go fucking figure it out. And so that's the first thing. And I want to get into the content very much so with you. But however, you've written the book in a legendary way. And if I could be bold enough to break a couple of things down that I know you must have done on purpose. First of all, the title and the positioning of the book is excellent. You open the jacket, and on the front part of the jacket, it says, please read if you want to be rich.
Yeah.
And you just fucking come right out and say what the fuck it is you're going to say.
Yeah.
And he said, you just picked up this book. If you're wondering if spending a few bucks on 288 pages could change your life and make you rich beyond your wildest dreams. And then you introduce yourself and away you go. So that's awesome. And so the positioning of the book, but the fucking table of contents.
Yeah.
And I know this is a crazy thing to talk to an author about.
Yeah. No. I think these are actually the details that matter.
This might be the greatest table of contents ever.
Yeah.
Because I'm a dyslexic ADD guy, and I think even those of us who are not, with a book, particularly a book like this, you're not telling me a story, and I don't necessarily need to read it from the beginning to the back to really follow it. Although I'm sure you laid it out the way you did for a reason. It looks very logical. But that said, I'm a guy who, no matter what you do with your book, I'm going to bounce around. It's just kind of who I am. And so what you've done by giving me the chapters and then sort of mini subheads inside those chapters with the page numbers is you've made it easy for me to do what I want to do anyway.
Right.
And so the first thing I did with your book was, and I can show you if you can see it here, I highlighted things that immediately jumped out to me, and I went to those pages because you made it real easy, and I read that shit, and I began to fill in the gaps after that.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to do it, and that was the intentionality. Both on the inside cover, I wanted to be meta with people, META, for people who don't know the word meta. Meta is this concept of understanding the context and the construct with which we are talking about. So if you were to all of a sudden, you and I could say, hey, we could stop this podcast for a second and say, hey, I wonder what the podcast listeners right now have thought about the first 10 minutes and what they would really like to hear. And I wonder what issues they might ask, right? So when I'm interviewing somebody, my metacognition, my thinking about thinking, my layer on top of the real world, as if I was a spectator with a camera pulled out looking at myself, is I'm thinking, what is my audience thinking and what do they want to know? So when I'm interviewing somebody, I don't have a list of questions. I ask one question: what are you working on? And then I listen to the answer and I start crafting follow-up questions based on what I hear. And you may see me in the podcast write a note or two, and it's just one word. It'll say Bitcoin, or it will say publishers or audiobook. And then I can go back to that and say, oh, you mentioned in that last answer audiobooks. Tell me, what's the process for making an audiobook today? Did you do it yourself? Is it easy? And so what that does is it creates a theme in people's minds where they're like, oh, this person is aware of what I'm experiencing, which then transfers enthusiasm and makes them feel empathy. So when you open that book and I say, hey, read this if you want to be rich, and I start talking about the person in the airport who's reading it, they get the sense that, oh, I'm aware that I'm an author, they're a reader, they're making a choice to buy a book or not. And in the book, many times I reference, hey, let me stop here in this book. And for the people who are reading, And that's like, it's almost like a taboo. It's sort of like breaking the fourth wall in the theater or TV space, where you look at the camera and you say, like, when, in Ferris Bueller's Day Off, when he looks at the camera and says, and for you people at home, don't worry about this, or whatever. That's meta,
Yeah,
right?
or like in The Office, when there's a
Sure.
nudge, nudge, wink, wink to the audience.
Yeah, that's all in the realm, in the space of being meta. And so in the book, I'm meta as well. And writing a table of contents like that, and I have to give credit to Brian Alvey, who was my writing coach. I wrote the book. He really constructed the table of contents and organized
He's a
all.
genius.
Well, he's great, and he's also very good at puns. So when I talked about the company Dyn, DYN, he would make references. So he'd say, "What about just in dine?" Like making a play on words of time, or and
So
then
he would play with you creatively like that.
we would just do this little back and forth during the writing process. And he said dynamite, and I like what he would do is he would write suggestions for the heads, and then I would look at them and I would either veto them, or I double down on them, or I just accept them. And I'd say 4 out of 5 times he'd come up with something clever, I just accepted. So dynamite was his, to talk about company Dyn I was on the board of, which is DYN. And the
Yeah,
people at Dyn loved it and they tweeted it. So those kind of moments in a book and that kind of table of
but to me,
contents
those
lets
are
you jump around.
very
Like you're saying.
creative things you've done, which are awesome and make the book additionally fun. But your writing style, you open chapter 1. This book has a singular goal: to teach you how massive wealth is created in the 21st century. The other thing I love about you, and I will be try to be as candid with you as I can. Had your book come out before Play Bigger, my book came out, I would have been a little more boastful, because you write stuff like, that's why this will be the greatest book ever written.
Business book ever written.
A business
Yeah.
book, excuse me.
Well,
And you say
it's
stuff
important
in
to know
here.
the line because I say it's the most important business book ever written, because I shouldn't be the one writing it. So like BuzzFeed did a funny thing where they took my funniest, most Jason quotes, but it's important to know the end of that, which is I actually don't think I should be the person writing a book on angel investing. I didn't go to Harvard for my MBA. I didn't go to Stanford. I don't have a finance degree. I never worked in venture capital. I am an outsider's outsider who broke their way into the internet business and then just started investing in his friends' companies and then became the #1 angel investor in the world.
Well, and I love that you say that, right? On chapter 10, you're going right there and you say, you're talking about the success you've had, and that you say, no one knows exactly where I will sit in the Hall of Fame of angel investing, but if one is ever built, it's safe to say I'll be in the top 10. And I just love it. You say, hey, listen.
Top 5 now.
There you go.
Yeah.
So
I won a couple championships, so I'm moving up.
So content, delivery, organization. This book, as an author myself, I know what it takes. It's a fucking it's a real piece of mastery. And that would be, even if the content was a B, all of the things would make it an A book. The fact that you have given the world a template to start thinking about and actually moving into angel investing and being in the startup world in this way, like no one else has, the content is a AAA plus. So maybe we can get straight into that.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for that. Yeah.
Jason, fucking A, dude. Seriously. I know what this takes.
Yeah.
I know the time. I know the heart. Some people think you're, whatever they think. I'm a fan, so I fucking love it. They can all go fuck themselves. But that you're arrogant, that you're this or that. I don't give a shit. I know you put big heart in this book, and man, it's fantastic. So, what do you think of the key concepts behind taking $100,000 and turning them into $100 million?
Yeah. So I think taking risk is one of the key things that people don't do in their life. I didn't in my early days. In fact, a lot of my life I spent fearful of being poor, which is a different type of motivation. And I talk about it in the book a little bit, but I was so scared of running out of money and being poor, and that it just put a fire in me that I just needed to accumulate some money and have a year of salary in the bank, or just in some way be a powerful person. So I wasn't, insignificant in the world, and that I wasn't going to get crushed, right? And I did some real self-reflecting about like, hey, how did I get there? But anyway, that's where I was in my 20s, which was I need to be somebody. And I started studying how power was accumulated when I lived in New York. And as best I could see it in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, that you could become powerful by having a magazine. Now that was a weird, odd thing to believe but it was the only idea I had about power, since I wasn't invited to any parties, I wasn't in a company, I didn't go to Harvard Business School or Stanford or wherever.
You weren't a successful entrepreneur.
I wasn't a successful entrepreneur. I was a nobody. I was a nobody's nobody. I was literally on the B train coming in, and I had two jobs. One was fixing laser printers, and the other one was being a bar back. If you don't know what a bar back is, it's the bartender's grunt person. If the bar does well enough to have a bar back, it means they're paying some kid at the time $5 an hour to carry ice and beer from the basement up so the bartender doesn't have to. So I would do that.
Those were your jobs, your first jobs in Silicon Valley, Jason?
Those were my first jobs in New York in the late 80s. Literally, it was $2.50 an hour was the minimum wage. And so I made $2.50 an hour fixing laser printers, the first HP laser jets, which were, they would get jammed every 1,000 pages, it felt like. And then I would be a bar back, and a waiter at times. And so I really wanted to be powerful. And so I just thought magazines would be the way to do that. And got into the industry doing journalism, and then eventually wound up angel investing. So how do you become an angel investor? Well, how I became one was I was already a successful entrepreneur, and one of the top venture firm in the history of venture capital, Sequoia Capital, said.
Now let me stop you there if I could. I'm curious, what makes you say Sequoia is the top venture capital firm in history?
Just returns, just based on performance. Like if we were to look at this by the number of points and championships won, they're the Michael Jordan, or whatever you want to put them at in the Parthenon of top people. They are the greatest by returns. They invested in Google, they did YouTube, they did Cisco, they did Apple, they did all the major companies you can think of. Oracle, yeah. I mean, they're the GOAT, right? And nobody's going to catch them. So they're the Phil Hellmuth of, Phil's got 14 bracelets in poker, and I think the next person's got 8 or 9, or maybe 7 or 8. I don't know.
It's funny how category king economics apply almost everywhere, right? One company takes 2/3 of the economics, and everyone else gets it.
In the venture space, it's crazy. The bottom firms lose money. The mid-tier firms basically perform like the NASDAQ, and then the top, or like the S&P, and then the top elite 10% will return a multiple of what would have been your returns in the stock market. In other words, they can do 2, 3, 4 times better than what happens in the stock market historically. So I read
something recently. Tell me if you think this is true, that the average venture partner investing in tech in Silicon Valley will not have an outcome.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes total sense to me. It's a hits-based business. So if you think about our business in the same way you might think about, it's even more pronounced than, say, making movies, because movies cost $100 million to make, and they make very few of them. We make many startups, and we only cost us $250,000 to get one started, or $2 million to get one to some reasonable amount of scale. So because of that, there's many, many experiments, and it is completely possible. If you look at an incubator like 500 startups, they've probably had a lot of singles and doubles, but I think they had one unicorn in close to 2,000, over 1,500 investments, probably closer to 2,000. So they had one unicorn and a couple of other $100 million companies, is my understanding, in 1,500 investments. And I think they'll still have a positive return, just hitting Twilio, which was a pretty famous company here in the Valley that went public last year. So the way I got into venture capital was I was invited to invest with another group of people's money. I had an LP, a limited partner, Sequoia, who asked me, hey, we'll give you some money, you invest, and we'll split it 50-50.
So Jason, how does a self-described sort of nobody become one of the very first quote unquote scouts for the legendary Sequoia?
I was the first.
You were the first.
Yeah.
I love that you're not kidding. You know who you remind me of? Yeah. I'm reading the book, and all of a sudden, sort of without me even thinking of it, a Kid Rock song that you may know called Cocky starts playing in my head. And I actually pulled it up in preparation. Do you know this song?
I don't. I like Kid Rock, though.
So the lyric is, they say I'm cocky, and I say what? It ain't bragging, motherfucker, if you back it up. They say I'm cocky, and I say what? It ain't bragging, motherfucker, if you back it up. And so I'm listening to some of the things you say in this book, and I'm like, wow. And for like, the universe is like playing this Kid Rock song in my head. So
well, I mean, listen,
there is a Kid Rock of angel investing.
I love it. I'm fine with that. I mean, I think the way I look at it is, there's this character, Jason Calacanis, that people have sort of created in the world. If you listen to my podcast, you kind of understand that I'm self-deprecating. If you read the book, you understand I'm self-deprecating. And I'm super self-aware of the fact that I did get lucky many times, But I'm also self-aware of the fact that I put myself in position to be lucky like that, and that I'm not the smartest kid in the class. I'm just the clever kid in the class who got the smart kids, and I beat them at poker, or I'm the fun, clever kid who the smartest kids wanted to hang out with. So I know I'm not the Poindexter. I know that I'm in the bottom third of the class. I also know I'll have all the class's money if we play poker. So you just have to be self-aware to know that you're the most if you're the most clever kid in the class versus the smartest kid. If you're the smartest kid, I suggest tying yourself to one of the clever kids who's a hustler. I'm a hustler, I'm clever, and I'm self-aware enough to know that there are people who are much smarter than me. Therefore, I should invest in them, and I should be tagging along with their success. And they, in turn, should be tagging along with my success and collaborating with me, because I have a network that is unrivaled in this industry. There's no single investor who has the network I have. I have the biggest network, I think. I'm trying to think of somebody who has a bigger network and more reach than me between my podcast, my events, and my social media. I mean, maybe Mark Andreessen, but he has a pretty good reach, but he's kind of a recluse. He doesn't really go out, and he doesn't have a conference or all that kind of stuff. I mean, he's obviously super influential, but the fact that I'm in the upper echelon of and between Mark Andreessen and I Chris Sacca,
that's
Mark
actually
Cuban.
very unique, particularly if you think about Sequoia, right? The best of my understanding is Don Valentine's headset has been, hey, listen, we shine the light on the entrepreneurs and let them take center stage, and we try to remain somewhat in the background.
Yep.
So I'm curious, particularly given your deep connection to Sequoia, what's made you such a good promoter?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I started as a journalist, so I understood the fundamentals of how journalists write stories and who they pick to write stories about, because I sat there with 25 full-time writers, maybe even more, 35 maybe, and then a bunch of freelancers at my magazine in the 90s, Silicon Valley Reporter, and I had them pitch me on who should be on the cover. And they would make arguments. This person should be on the cover for this reason. This person should be on. And then when we made the Silicon Valley 100 list and we ranked the top 100 executives, there was a lot of pain and suffering that went into that. And a large number of people would then come to me and try to lobby me to move up and down on the list. So I understood the dynamics of, who got picked for these lists. So when one of my founders comes to me and is like, I'm one of the 40 under 40 or 30 under 30 or 25 between 25 and 26. I'm like, by the way, that selection process is a room full of journalists who are lazy, bored, and looking to put people on the list who are going to create controversy. So whenever they make those lists, here's how it works. Here's the obvious people who have demonstrable success. Here are a couple of people who we're picking to make the list seem balanced in some way, right? So we're going to pick some nonprofits to go on there too. We're going to pick, some people who are, in education or government, right? To make the list feel a little balanced, that they're coming from different places. And then here, let's put some wild cards on. And the wild cards are specifically designed to make people argue over how dare you put that person on the list, or that person shouldn't be on the list, or whatever. In other words, to get people to talk about the list. So the fact that you're on the list is just a bizarre construct by a bunch of editors to try to get people to debate the list. So, and it has zero reflection on the state of your actual business. But I knew how that kind of game worked. So there is this character in the world, Jason Calacanis, who is a bombastic, candid, will say what he thinks, and who has some level of success that's getting disturbingly large and has continued to get bigger and bigger, and people can play along at home and watch that character develop. And in truth,
but I got interrupted.
Some of it's authentic. Like, I am authentically candid. You can tell
this
that
is
here.
what I want to push on you.
Yeah.
Because I think your podcast is fucking awesome, and you're definitely playing yourself up for sure.
Yeah.
But as you know, there are podcasters and personalities of whatever type you want to talk about who are very obviously playing a character, and the best ones, to the comment you made earlier, sort of do a nudge, nudge, wink, wink to the camera to let us know that they know that they're playing a character and we enjoy the character and it's not really them, or it's kind of like if Colbert used to be, right?
Yeah, well, that's pure character, right?
Pure
That's
character.
But you're completely
really
fictional
like
character.
I mean,
no.
I don't know. You tell me, but you feel like, I don't know, maybe 20 or 30% a puffed up version of who you really are?
Yeah, I think I play with it a bit, so like I know that it tweaks certain people when I say I'm the number one angel investor of all time, or I'll be the number one angel investor of all time. That specifically tweaks a subset of people.
I could
And
guess a couple people it might piss off.
yeah, and it's hilarious to me that like when I write, it's the best business book ever written because I shouldn't be the one writing it. Like I think that's the most self-aware statement in the world, which is, God, I know this book is good because nobody else has written one. And it's also, I know I'm better at this than most people and I actually have something to share. But I also know it's going to tweak people to say, like, how dare you say it's the best business book? But I think it's kind of funny that this has a chance of being a great seminal business book and that I'm an outsider who wrote it who should not be the person writing it. There are people who have degrees in finance and who have worked in venture and other spaces for 20 or 30 years who should have written this book, and
Well,
they
and that's
didn't.
another reason I like it. You are the street fighter. You tell me if this is unfair, but I feel kinship from your place because you feel like someone who came from the island of misfit toys. You were not necessarily welcomed with open arms when you came to Silicon Valley. God knows I certainly wasn't. And so I could relate to all the punk rockness of A, who you are, and B, how you've delivered this album, so to speak.
Yeah, and for people who are wondering, hey, how does this apply to me? The book really is about, as you said in the first sentence, it's about how wealth is going to be created in the 21st century, which is going to be radically different than what our parents experienced. Our parents, they would graduate from college with little to no, if they did graduate from college, with little to no debt. They might have like half their salary. So if they were going into a $30,000 a year job, they might have 15K or 10K in debt. So in other words, it was manageable. After the first couple of years of working, they could pay it down. Now people are graduating school, they get a 50K job and they have 150K in debt, which means they will never catch up because it's very hard to survive in any kind of a city on 40 or 50K. Therefore, they don't have any savings and they don't have the ability to pay down their loan, which means they will never own a home. All of the previous books, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Secret Millionaire on the Block, Art of the Deal, all of these books were designed to teach you how people made money from real estate and by having white collar, high paying jobs and being frugal in their life. That was the old blueprint. Don't go on vacations, do a staycation. Don't buy a new car, buy a used car,
Well,
rent out
and
your
even worse
basement,
than that,
all this stuff.
and I don't mean any disrespect because I think there's probably a point in time where it made sense. But if you go back to what was that book Peter Lynch wrote in the late 80s, early 90s that everybody adopted as their kind of public market investing, buy shit and understand. And remember all that shit he said?
Yeah, it was basically like if you would use the product, if your daughter or your son used the
Right.
product,
Buy stuff you understand.
yeah, beating the street, no. Learn to earn, no. I'm trying to
But
remember which one it was. But yeah, so that was perfectly reasonable. If you were a civilian and you went to the Gap and you loved the Gap, you knew at least some number, you had some insight, so you might hold the company, which I do think actually is valid, except there are people who know much more than that now. So the information asymmetry is even greater. Like there are people who are front running the market and trade. So even when you make your trade, there's somebody making a micro trade ahead of you to try to, get you on the way in, and there's somebody trying to get you on the way out. I mean, it's pretty
and here's the
gnarly out
thing about
there.
the stock market. My accountant Greg Finley is the only reason I have any money. God bless him. I was pretty good at making it, but he's the reason I kept it. And he said to me, "Listen, you need to understand something. Over a decade, if you can do 5% in the public markets net of taxes and fees, you're killing it.
Killing it.
Killing it." So it's like, holy shit. So to get to your point about, graduating with a huge amount of debt and so forth and so on, if you do the rich dad, poor dad thing where you're, managing your expenses and contributing your max 401k and all the good shit that we were all told to do, which is good basic shit, with the college debt that people have today, I don't know how you get above that when you're only getting 5%. So we need to do something that breaks through.
Yeah. And the fact is, if you're compounding at, these low numbers, it's not going to change your lifestyle. And so the only way people thought you would change your lifestyle is if you bought the home. So when I talked to my parents about buying their home, my mom was a nurse. She was making 25, 30K. My dad was a bartender making about 500 a week. So they had about roughly 50K in yearly income. Their home cost 48,000. And so the brownstone they bought was 48,000. That brownstone today is $1.2 million in value. It's gone up 24x since 1978, which is 88 and 40 years later. It's gone up that much. Pretty amazing, but not unexpected. I mean, real estate goes up in value in New York City and Brooklyn especially. If they were a nurse today and a bartender today, they would have a combined income of probably 200K. 125 for the nurse, 150, maybe 50 to 75K for a bartender. Put it at 200, that means their home was 6 times their household income, 6x. Now, if they were graduating with some level of debt as well, they would have 100K in debt for the nurse, let's say, or 50 or 100K debt. So they wouldn't even be able to start paying off that 6x for a while. Maybe when they were 35 years old, they would be able to buy the home, or 45. And the whole premise was you used to be able to buy that home, then buy a second home or an income property, and then ride that. Those opportunities are gone. And I think even the white collar opportunities, if you look at what's happening in artificial intelligence and machine learning, people are under this grand illusion that like the white collar jobs are going to be protected. That is the silliest, most insane concept. If you think your job as an attorney, if I were to ask any attorney or white collar executive, was your job harder than beating the top 3 Go players heads up today? Was your job harder than beating the top 3 poker players heads up, or the top
Jason, I just
chess
talked to a
master?
woman that I know who just got back, and you'll forgive me for forgetting the name of the town. There's a town in Mexico that is like jammed full of dentists, like highly trained, American level quality or close enough for rock and roll dentists. And because our healthcare system is so fucking expensive and screwed up, people just go down there if you have a serious thing that you need to get done, and they do that, right? So, you would think, to your point, hey, I'm a white collar worker, I have a dentist practice, et cetera, I'm going to be good. Well, in a world where people can just easily get on a plane and go and pay, I don't know, a quarter the cost just going over the border, all of a sudden, maybe you're not so safe being a dentist.
Yeah, and same thing with plastic surgery. People are going to Korea as the capital. I mean, some ungodly percentage of people in Korea have had plastic surgery.
Do you like
people
what
are
I've done
going
with
on
my hair, with my surgery?
You get your hair back. Get some pecs in there. Ugh. So I think how wealth is going to be created is, and job disruption, destruction is very real. So if those two things are very real, then a savvy person would be looking at what are some pockets where I could go to ride this massive technological wave. If this wave is going to be running over all these jobs and erasing them, well, you would rather ride the wave on a surfboard or be behind it in a jet ski or something on a wave runner than be in front of it on a wave runner and get trampled by it, or just be sitting on the beach, eating your picnic lunch and having no idea that the tsunami is coming towards you. The tsunami's coming. And our kids if they go to college and have 200K in debt or 300K in debt when they come out, they're going to get knocked out like this current generation is. And this current generation's opting out of capitalism. They're opting out in some ways.
Because they can't even play, right? They're like, oh, fuck.
Well, they just the game is over, so why would I participate in a game that's over? And they're not wrong. The game has changed so significantly that what they were told is just totally not true. What we were told was kind of half true. We were told as Gen Xers, which I'm assuming you are like me.
49.
I'm 46, so we're both like squarely Gen Xers. Like we were told, hey, get a great job, get a lot of skills, and then maybe start your own thing and be independent. Maybe you could be a freelancer for other companies, but if you get skills.
I grew up in a situation where, the pretty clear direction was what you want is a good government job.
Sure. I mean, I was pushed towards being a cop or a fireman. That was like, people thought, hey, kid from Brooklyn, get a job as a cop or a fireman, which my brother was a cop and became a fireman. I was going to go into the force in Brooklyn and be a cop. At the same time my brother was, I elected to go to school at night and then was thinking about going and being a cop after I got my degree. But it was the best expectation. And you know what? Listen, if anybody deserves a pension, it's people with a bullet, target on their back and people running into burning buildings.
Amen. So, hallelujah. Like, what do you want to have happen when you call 911? As a side note, Jason, one of my next door neighbors is a retired fire chief. And he has a great life, and I hear this criticism, but well, why should a fire chief be able to afford a nice house or this or that? And I'm like, okay, so what are you saying? You want the moron to be the fire chief? Like, I'm going to pay taxes for that. I want the smart, good, effective people who know how to do shit to be fire chiefs. Jason, did I lose you?
You lost me for a second there, but I would.
Okay.
You would talk about the fire chief.
Yeah, I was like, well, you don't like fire chiefs making money. Well, so you want the moron to be the fire chief?
Uh, yeah, you broke up again. Hold on. Let's see if we.
Is it me or is it you? It
I'm
better
trying to
not be
figure out.
me.
Let's see. I'm in. It shouldn't be me, but you never know. Let me. Yeah, no, it should be fine. Looks like it's
Do
good.
you want to
I don't know what
reinitiate this
could have happened, but
this Zoom?
I think we're good.
Okay.
No, I think it's good. I think it's good. It looks pretty good now.
So,
Not sure why.
there was a. You there?
There it goes again. Oh. Yeah, hold on a second. I'm just going to move a little closer to my router, just in case it's me.
Let me
Just bear
test
with me
my
while I
internet
do
speed
that.
to make sure here.
If it's me, it should stop immediately because I'm going right next to my high-speed router. And
I'm checking my speed tester right now. It looks like I'm.
1 second. Okay.
So my download is
here.
at 47.7.
I turned my speaker off. Hold on. I'm getting my audio back on. Okay. What sound am I on? Microsoft. Okay. I should be good now.
Yeah, my
Tell me if you
download
can hear me.
speed is 47 and my upload speed is 11. So I should be
Yeah,
good on
I
my
think
end.
let's see, speed test. I'll do a quick
That's
speed
actually
test
a bet.
myself.
We see your face better anyway there.
Okay, yeah, well, I'm literally right up against my router, so if it's
Yeah. And how are we
I
doing on
couldn't
time?
possibly.
We're about we got a little over 10 minutes before the click of the hour. I got another 2 hours.
Yeah, we can go a little bit longer. We can go to 12:15.
Okay.
let's go to 12:15.
All right, excellent. So, what's your definition of what an angel investor really is?
So, an angel investor is an individual who makes their individual investment decisions to put money into an early stage startup in the technology space. So, the angels I'm talking about are ones operating in Silicon Valley or other tech hubs who are specifically investing in high growth startups. Those are angels. There are people who could consider themselves angels who invest in movies or pizzerias or dry cleaners or their friend's album. I consider that charity because none of those businesses historically result in positive outcomes. If you were to invest in a movie, that's a quick way to lose all of your money. If you invest in restaurants, that's a quick way to lose all of your money, or maybe get half of your money back 10 years from now. These are terrible, terrible, terrible investment decisions to make, unless you want to be on set and meet actors. You want to be the king of the hill and always have a reservation for Friday and Saturday nights. Or 3, it's your kids or your nieces and nephews, and you want to support them in your career. And
It's
that
sort of, is it like
the
the
return.
rich Silicon Valley person who just decides now I want to have a winery? It's kind of like that too, right?
Sure. Yeah, in those cases, those people are like, if I break even doing something I'm passionate about, it's a win. If I lose a little bit of money, it's a win. If I make a little money, it's like, it's just a big F you to the world. I'm making money making wine. Go fuck yourself. It's like, who's better than me? But most of the people I know who started dabbling their toes into the film business just got their bells rung.
Just got
They just
crushed.
lost all their money, or they just spent years doing it and suffered in taking 5, 6, 7 years to get a movie out, and the movie then made them 100 grand or 250 grand, and they're like, "Why did I do this?" I'm like, now I'm back to a minimum wage job after being somebody who made tens of millions of dollars in technology. It's just a disaster. So you want to be investing in high growth companies. How do you know it's a high growth company? Certain categories are valued in the public markets at certain multiples. If you're in a technology company, you can go look at what's called the price to earnings ratio. PE ratio. And if you look at the PE ratios of different categories, things like software or technology companies like Facebook and Google, which do advertising-based businesses primarily, Amazon, which has Amazon Web Services or cloud computing, these things are valued because they're high growth. They can double in sales every year. If you're a car company or if you're selling groceries or you're an airline, you can just look historically at what their price earnings multiples are, and the public market will tell you those are not attractive businesses to own typically. They may be fine for what we talked about earlier, the 5% a year, if you can find special circumstances where you think one has an edge over the other, but generally they suck. So angel investing in this context is high growth technology startups. A high growth startup to me is one that will return you 100 times your money. So you put in $1, you get 100. You put in 1,000, you get 100,000. You put in 10,000, you get 1,000,000. You get the idea. You want to be able to return 100 times your money. And if
before you write a check, you sit there and say to yourself, self, I believe that there is some reasonable chance, you could tell me what you think the odds need to be for you to write that check, that if I write this check, I'm going to get 100x return. That's where you have convinced yourself in your head that that's a real possibility.
Right. And if it was anything better than 1 in 100, you would be in good shape, right? So if I could place a 1 in 100 bet over and over again to get 100x, if I make 100, I therefore should hit 1, therefore I should be even. But if you were able to place those bets and there was an outside chance that you could hit a 500 or 1,000 to 1, even if it's an edge case, well, you would still make those bets because, hey, I'm going to make back my money and I get this free lottery ticket. Oh my God, I could get a 5,000x or a 10,000x or a 1,000x or a 250x. You get the idea.
Yep.
And so what you want to look for when you ask questions, and I go into all the questions I ask and other people ask.
It's so great how you lay it out. Thank you.
Well, one of the things I've learned over time is people just don't know how to say things. They literally don't know what words to use to convey what they're trying to get an answer to. And conversely, I talk to entrepreneurs, and in my incubator, one of the things we work on is answering questions. I have adults who have successful businesses who, when asked a question by a venture capitalist, do not answer the question. And I'm like, hey, time out. What did the person ask you? They asked you, how do you what's your best channel for acquiring new customers? And you answered everything but that question. Start with answering their question. And then after you answer their question, ask them, is that a satisfactory answer? Or do you have a follow-up question? Before you go on your own tangent like it's a goddamn presidential debate where the whole goal is to, not answer the question. The goal here is to answer the question and build credibility with the investor base. So I go into the exact questions to ask and how to listen and what to listen for, which is the other skill people don't have. Everybody wants to talk about all their experience, and what you want to do is be like Columbo. If you haven't seen Columbo, go watch the 70s and 80s TV show. Columbo would ask very basic questions that in some ways were so basic it made him look stupid. And then he would let people talk, and eventually the murderer or the thief would
do you
reveal
bring a trench
themselves.
coat to any of these meetings?
Yeah, I do. It's one more thing there. You said that you
and he always had that notebook. He was always scribbling.
Yeah, it was always right now. But you said you made pasta. You made pasta before you left, right? Yeah,
and I love how.
Okay, great. I just want to make sure because I love pasta too. And then
it was always the last question he asked that was the killer one. Like the person he was talking to sort of thought we were pretty much at the end, and he almost maybe would take a step away, and then he'd sort of turn back with that notepad and go, one more thing. Yeah. But the cool thing about what you're doing on that stuff, Jason, is it's the ongoing process of democratization of angel investing. Is it not? Is that fair?
Exactly.
And that's what I love about it is I get to choose.
Yep.
And I don't have to pick. If I want to invest like Jason, I can, and I can pick and choose. And that's very powerful. And it's very different than for you as an angel. What I love about it is you're getting the benefit of the carry, right?
Yep. It's nice.
I'm paying you to go out, source these deals and curate them for me. If I can use that language, you tell me if that's not the way to think about it.
If it returns. If it doesn't return, I get zero, right? The syndicate league gets zero if it loses money. So you only get paid. There's no fees. So you only get
unlike
paid.
A venture firm, there's no 2% fee. Or
no fee. Yeah. So it's fee free. It's upside. The only thing that's different than a venture firm that a venture firm has an advantage in is if a venture firm invests in 50 companies at once, you don't have to do any work. So if you don't want to actively invest, that's probably a better choice. But the other thing is if 49 of the deals lose, those losses recoup against the one win. When you're doing syndicates, because it's a different group of investors each
Right.
time, each carries individual. So
Right.
you gain being able to pass or change your dollar amount, but you lose because it's
You
individual
don't
deal
have a
by deal carry.
portfolio. You have to create the portfolio yourself, so to speak.
Yeah, it's deal
The
by deal
other
carry.
the other
Yeah.
cool thing, and I actually have been dying to ask you this, is by doing that, you don't have to go out and turn yourself into a venture capital firm to do bigger deals.
Yeah, so it's slowly becoming significant. The last three deals we did at jasonsyndicate.com were 1,000,000, 500, and 250. So those three deals together were, whatever, 600K each on average, but a range of 250 to a million.
And how much
And
typically are you putting in, and how much does a syndicate put in?
so in the case of the $1,000,000 one, I think I did $250,000. The syndicate did a million. In the case of the 250K one, I think I put 25 or 50K in. In the case of the 500 one, I think I did 25 or 100K. So somewhere in that range. Typically, I make 25K to 100K bets. If I have crazy conviction, it might be 100 to 250. So what happens is now the syndicate knows by looking at my behavior, oh, if Jason's putting in 250, and he's going 5x his normal bet size or 10x, 5 to 10x his normal bet size, maybe I should shape my bet a little differently. It would be like if you turned, uh, you know, if you turn two pair, but you also picked up a flush draw and you have the nut flush, so you're like, oh my God, I have aces with a second pair and I have the ability to hit the nut flush, or I can hit a boat. You have your hand just increased in value, so you want to put more money in because it just got that much better. And so I talk about gambling and bet shaping and a lot of these concepts in the book because again, most people don't take enough risk in their life. I talk about diversification. You need to really start to hit 20, 30, 40 investments in order to have a reasonable chance to have one of them break out. And when I say break out, it could be 5x or 10x. It doesn't have to be
So
100 or
you think
50.
30 to
But to
40,
have one of them break out.
30 to 40 investments to really get a big
I,
enough net.
I ask people this question. I ask people this question all the time, other investors, and most investors tell me between 20 and 50. So I basically believe if I was advising my family, and I have to be careful, I'm giving financial advice here. So the way I have constructed giving financial advice in the book is number one, don't read this book and don't angel invest and don't participate
You
in the
put it before
riskiest,
the
most,
cover, before the table of contents, right? It says, don't fucking invest a
yeah,
dime
just
if you got to lose it all, right?
Yeah, because this is the riskiest asset class, and it's also one that you get the bad news first. In other words, because you're investing in really speculative investments, if you invest in 30 companies and let's say 7 out of 10 go to zero, your first 3 years as an investor is getting that bad news. So it's essentially like sitting at a poker table and for the first 20 nights of playing, you lose every night. And then you have the next, nights 20 through 40, and all of a sudden you start winning every other night. And then you get to nights 40 to 60 and you start winning every night. Because if a company is going to fail, it's probably going to fail in the first 2 or 3 years. And if it's going to succeed, it's probably going to succeed in years 6 through 10. If you look at my Uber investment, my Thumbtack investment, my DataStax investment, those are all billion-dollar companies.
I don't
I
I
invested in
don't
them.
think you read. Have you read Play Bigger by any chance yet, Jason?
Not yet, but I'm going to after. I'm going to get the audiobook
So
right after.
your mind's gonna blow because one of the sets of data science analysis we did was we took every venture-backed tech company founded from 2000 to 2015 when we gave Hollis the manuscript, and we asked this question, which is who produced enduring value. And we define enduring value as taking the stock price day one of closing as a public company going forward. That was our definition. And interestingly enough, we asked the data set three seminal questions. Does the amount of money a startup raises impact its ability to produce enduring value? Turns out there's no correlation.
No, of course not. Google raised only one round of funding.
Right. And the second one we thought was, well, you'd think the more smart investors look at it, the more likelihood it's going to be good. So do the number of rounds matter? That is to say, every time more and more smart folks looks at it and they dump money in, that must be an indicator. That's no indicator of enduring value. And then we asked this question, which gets to the comment you just made. Does the age of the company at time of IPO, and here's what we discovered, and we actually called it, you're not going to believe this, the 610 law.
Huh.
Because every company in the tech business that produces enduring value by the definition I just gave goes public at 6 to 10 years of age.
Right. It makes total sense to me, because if you think about the first 2 or 3 years, that's about finding product market fit. The next 2 or 3 years is about finding a team that could exploit that product market fit and do what we call scaling. And then the last phase, the 6 to 10 year, is what we call, not the investment period, but the redemption period, right? That's when you're pulling the crops in, right? And that's the harvest phase, probably the best term for it. So that 6 to 10 year harvesting is where you can, you'll make the money, which is a group of people found product market fit. They built a team that exploited it by scaling it. And if you look at Uber and Airbnb, they're currently in that massive scale moment. And when those two companies go public, I would think they would go public in the next 18 months. You'll see all of this money rush in, because those are the two companies that have had the actual revenue. If you look at the other two companies that went public, Snapchat didn't have any revenue. They had massive expense, and they had very small revenue, 150 or 180 million dollars a quarter in revenue. Now they have a great stock price, even at 15 billion. But that company is making, if you times 150 times 4, they're making 600 million. And then you look at Uber making, 2.5. It's making a lot more money. So, and Airbnb is doing tremendous as well. So, you have to be careful. Some of the companies that went public too soon appear to be Blue Apron and Snap. Maybe they went too early.
We
And then
discovered
other
that
ones,
all the companies that go public before 6 years crater in
yeah.
value, and the companies that go public north of 10 years of age tread water. That's what the data set shows.
Yeah, so that's interesting. The 10-year one. The 10-year one sounds to me like you have to realize what are the motivating factors here. The motivating factors are the fund managers who own the largest percentage ownership in the company. So what probably happens at that 10-year mark is they didn't want to take it public because it wasn't working. They get to 10 years, they're
No,
like,
these are public companies, Jason. Yeah.
in year 10 of being public, or they
No,
went
if they
public at
go
year 10?
public at
Right, right.
age of 10 or
Perfect.
more,
Right. So those
they
companies,
don't create value. They tread water.
see, that makes sense, because what probably happened with that company was the fund managers who were in it, they've been in it for whatever, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. That fund is over. That fund, they're like one of the last pieces of the fund. So let's say Sequoia or Benchmark or I were investors in that company. As an angel, I would have been in it for 10 years. As a venture firm, they might have been in it for 6 or 7 or 8. Now we're all sitting here going, it's 10 years. Can we get our money back? What is this company worth? They say, oh, the company's worth $1 billion.
Right.
It's like, great, give me my money. Oh, nobody wants to buy it? Or we think going public will get a better multiple than the shitty offers we got from people who want to acquire it. Great, take it public, give me my money, I'm out. So what you're seeing is those would be weak companies. They couldn't get out in their prime. They weren't breaking out. And the investors who are very sophisticated said, enough. I have other opportunities to pursue. So that's what's happening in those cases. It's like they went
Well,
through
I
that
would
6 to
love
10.
to hear your analysis if you choose to go through
Yeah.
Play Bigger at all. After you read the book and you sort of, we give you our category design lens. I'd love your lens in investing after you have the category lens. Because one of the theories that we have is, and what's right there in the book is, one of the reasons this enduring value model works this way is we think, and this is not data, this is an educated guess, it takes 6 to 10 years for the category, that is to say the market space, to tip, and B, to establish yourself as the category king. One of the other big data points we have in the book, Jason, is that we looked at the percentage of market cap in any given market category that goes to the leader. And we did this in tech. And it turns out that number is 76%. So you and I both know that we are in a winner-take-all game. One company takes all the economics, right? And so the interesting thing about the 610 law is what we think this is telling us is it takes 6 to 10 years for a category to develop, for the king to emerge, for the king to destroy the competitors and take the 2/3, if not more, of the economics.
That makes total sense. And if you think about it, there's this other mitigating factor, which is even the kings realized, you know what? I don't want to have like a target on my back. So let's leave some, competitors out there to kind of fill the the antitrust space. So like if you look at buy.com to Amazon or Walmart to Amazon, Walmart online to Amazon, or Twitter, or Snap versus Facebook, Facebook is completely content to leave Snap and Twitter off on the side there to be their 15-25% market, so that the Justice Department, or more likely the EU, doesn't come down on them like a bag of bricks. And it's here's the interesting thing about the winner take all model. It appears the winner is taking most of the market share. But when you take 74% market share and the other people are taking only 25% market share, what's actually happening is, if you look at the profits in that space, the profits will be massively,
Massive.
massively aggregating to the winner, because they both probably have the same cost to keep the business running. In other words, for Bing and Yahoo to have a search engine
Yes.
index costs about the same as Google's. So then,
Yes.
they only hit the money when they cover, let's say, the $5 billion it costs to run the operation. If it costs $5 billion and you make 150 billion, you've got all that profit. If it costs 5 billion, you make 6 billion, you've only got $1 billion in profits. Your profits suck. So that's where cash flow and money printing machines come into order. So I think it's actually a brilliant way to look at it. I think our books probably dovetail. Like mine's a little lens into this like early stage and how to pick there. Yours is like, hey, here's how to pick, when you get to that second half of the enduring value. And
Yeah,
a
and
lot of
how to think
VC
about the
firms,
way.
yeah.
I'm dying to get your brain on how do I, because here you've helped me think about how do I think about companies to invest in and how do I do that, which is incredibly valuable. What I would love to hear from you next is, how do you think about those companies in the context of the market categories they're trying to design and ultimately dominate? Because, of course, these startups are either creating a new category or they're meaningfully trying to reimagine an existing category so that the world changes and people go from doing whatever they used to do in this area to whatever it is this new startup wants them to do.
Yeah.
Right?
Here's the way to think about that. Nobody knows, and nobody can know, because if you look at Uber, the Uber pitch deck said they thought they had a total addressable market of $1 billion or $2 billion. They thought they were competing with cabs, black cabs at first, what we call black cabs here in the U.S., but fancy car service, a private driver. When in fact, what they were actually competing against was not even cabs. What they were really competing against was car ownership. They were competing with people, millennials and others, who said, do I need a car? Do I need a second car? No, a second car is not going to get used that much. It's going to sit in the driveway or sit in our garage. What I really need is an Uber out to the Hamptons and back and split it with three friends, or a zip car, or whatever it happens to be. I don't need to own a car anymore. And for millennials, they all want to live this very lightweight lifestyle. And so the total addressable market, what happened with Uber was we started to see that in some markets, not only were they going to catch up to cabs, they were going to beat cabs in terms of total revenue. Wait a second. If we're fighting the cab companies and we're making more money than they are,
We're in a
we
different
have
category.
well, and I think what happened was they made a market. If you look at
No, they did.
Airbnb,
They created a category in the most powerful way you can.
and Airbnb is the same story. I mean, I had one of my producers come to me and say, "Hey, I'm going to Japan for 10 days. Can I take an extra 3 days off without pay? I only have like 7 vacation days or whatever." I was like, "Okay, sounds reasonable as long as your work's done. Where are you staying in Japan?" Like, "Oh, I got an Airbnb." I was like, "Oh, Japan's kind of expensive." And they said, "Yeah, we have an Airbnb and it's going to cost us like $60 a night. So, the whole trip's going to cost 600." I was like, "Oh, because when I went to Japan, it cost me 600 a night, not 600
Right.
for 10 nights." And listen, I'm more affluent at this. I'm at a later stage of my life. I'm not staying in I'm not staying in somebody else's apartment. Period. I want my own plush apartment. I want my own bed with like nice linen, and I want room service.
And I want room service. I was just about to say,
Yeah, I was like,
and hey,
listen,
you know
10
what?
years
I
ago.
want a fucking mini bar. I
Yeah.
was just in San Diego and I stayed at a nice hotel. And a lot of hotels don't have any mini bars. I
No.
want Jack Daniels in my fucking room, please.
Here's the problem. When I was young, I used to look at that room service bill and go, service charge plus a tip plus tax. Like, this is ridiculous. I'm paying twice as much. Now I'm like, I kind of want to pay twice as much and not get out of bed. It's kind of the experience. But what's interesting is, I think if you look at Airbnb to me is really about a whole another class of people taking longer trips and taking trips they would have not taken had they had to spend 2, 3, 4x on a hotel. And they're either
They're not
extending the trip.
taking share from hotels in that context. They're a whole
Definitely
new
not.
space.
And on the margin, sure, they're definitely effing with the low tier hotels. If the hotel was charging $100 or $79 or $150, Airbnb is fucking with them. If their hotel costs, if it's a Ritz Carlton or the Four Seasons or St. Regis or W Hotel, those people are not giving up that experience to stay in somebody's extra bedroom or their pool house. They probably would not want that. They want to have a front desk to call to get a newspaper and to get coffee whenever they want. So I think the markets can really grow bigger than people anticipate. And to me, that's kind of a big deal. And so
And
why even try to see the problem is at that early stage, I've learned nobody knows what the market is. Therefore, if you try to understand it, you will miss big things. I miss Twitter, I miss Zynga because I was trying to figure out the market. Once I divorced myself from trying to figure out if I'm a genius in the market size, I started thinking about, is this person a winner? Is this person going to be dogged and never give up? Because a person who has skills, that one piece, they have skills and they're dogged and they're passionate about the space. If you look at those three things and they intersect, a person who loves space and rockets, and who's an engineer and who will never give up when the rockets blow up, in the center of those three circles is Elon Musk. And then if you look at Facebook, it's like somebody who is an incredible developer, who is passionate about the people, organizing the planet, and who will never give up. That's Zuckerberg. You put a Z in the middle of that Venn diagram. So who can you put into that? Many times I meet a founder who's got a lot of skill and they never give up, but they're not passionate about the space. And they're like, you know what? I'm out. I got far enough with this. Like Evan Williams did Twitter for some period of time. He was absolutely skilled. He was absolutely, um, but I wonder how passionate he was about Twitter itself because he didn't tweet. He wasn't into tweeting. That wasn't his thing. He didn't like to mix it up on Twitter all day. He wrote a tweet every week. So I always wondered,
maybe
like,
our president should be the CEO of Twitter.
well, actually, I guarantee you our president would have more success as the CEO of Twitter than the current job.
Yeah,
but we don't want to get political here.
Yeah,
But
it's interesting because one of the things that we talk about in Play Bigger is don't necessarily fall in love with the solution, but fall in love with the problem. And we
absolutely.
think that there are biggest problem in the startup world today, and I'd argue even the business world, Jason, is too many solutions without a problem.
Yeah, it's very easy for people to build products today. So what's nice about that is you got a bunch of people building stuff. Great. But it's like if I told, if I put 100 people, 100 teams into a huge factory and gave them each a big loft space and said, here's a hammer, make a better hammer. Would they come back with a better hammer? Or would it be just like, okay, I just hammered it now with the hammer I gave you. Give me your hammer. And it's like, okay, yeah, this hammer is a different color. This hammer is a different, whatever. This hammer is a little bit more svelte. It's like, you know what? None of these things are that groundbreaking. And so you have a lot of that Me Too, like not making something that's demonstrably better. And I always tell people, you got to make something that's 10 times better if you really want to break out.
Well, and this is one I would push you on. I would push you to think about, because I think language matters a lot because it creates a change in thinking. It's the distinction between better and different.
Sure.
So better, because here's what happens. If I'm Netflix and I compare myself to Blockbuster, what's in people's head is Blockbuster.
Yeah.
When I say, hey, Blockbuster's ice cream and we're sushi, we're different.
Yeah.
All of a sudden I'm creating a space for myself where I'm compared to myself, and then others who do the things that I've told the world that I do, particularly around a particular problem, then get compared to me, as opposed to me being compared to somebody else, which is what all the legendary innovators who were intuitive about understanding categories, it's what they naturally did. They wanted their products and services to be compared to nothing other than themselves, and the world to be compared to them.
Yeah, that's a very astute observation, because if you think about a company like Yahoo was always compared to Google, even though it was very different. And if you look now, Snapchat and Twitter are constantly compared to Facebook, which is very different. And then if you think about it in terms of if you want to kill a small competitor, if you copy their innovations and put them in, now it's like, yeah, we're by putting stories into Instagram and into WhatsApp and into Facebook, you're basically saying like Snapchat is nothing. What they did is just table stakes. It's just a feature, and they really are nothing. We are billions of users. We're totally different. Yeah, it's an interesting observation, I think.
And it's a very powerful strategy. Now, I know I don't have you for too much longer, but one of the things I loved about your book, and I'll just paraphrase it by giving you this little bit of background. I'm originally from Canada. I've been here for 20 years, and the entire time I've been here, I get emails and phone calls inviting me to join the board of some hot Canadian technology company. I have done 0 boards of hot Canadian companies in 20 years, because this is what I say to them. When you move the fucking headquarters to Silicon Valley and you have sales, marketing, engineering, finance, if you want to do development in Waterloo, frickin' A, that's awesome, or wherever the fuck you want to do it. That's
great college up there. Yeah.
Yeah. But until you adopt the model that the Israelis have adopted, go fuck yourself. And they stay in Canada. And so when I got to the section of your book, when you said Silicon Valley is the center of the universe.
Yeah.
Oh, so tell me more about that, Jason.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's
why you think it, and B, why you wrote it.
Listen, it's not the greatest place in the world to live. It's a very one-dimensional place. It's a charming, wonderful place. I'm not saying it's bad, but if you were to pick what city you wanted to live in, you might pick New York, or you might even pick Vancouver or Montreal or Miami or
Austin
or Los Angeles or Austin. Like there might be, well, not Boston, but anyway, it's cold but anyway, Boston's fine, but you wouldn't pick Boston in your top 10 cities to live in. But in terms of how nice it is, the weather and everything, you pick someplace with palm trees, hopefully. But the point is, if you want to succeed and you know that there are an unlimited number of investors and talented people here in Silicon Valley, and then in every other place, it's 1/10,000th or 1/1000th the resources, a logical person would say, unless I've broken out already and I'm like, Snapchat in LA, this is a good place to be and have a headquarters. And so the high art today is headquarters in Silicon Valley, and then developers in wherever you can find 50 developers, and then sales and marketing and customer service in a place where it's incredible cost of living. Colorado, Arizona, Texas, upstate New York,
Portland.
These places. Portland, a lot of those places, Portland's a little expensive, but a lot of those other places, you can easily find an apartment for $1,000 or less per month. And if you can live if you're going to spend half your money on rent, being able to spend 10 or 15,000 on rent instead of 50,000, that is a huge difference when you're doing customer support. Yelp got barbecued because they had customer support here in Silicon Valley. It made no sense. And people in Silicon Valley were like, you're only paying us $12 an hour. I can't live on this. And they're like, yeah, we're putting those jobs in Arizona, and there's an unlimited supply of people in Arizona or Colorado that are looking for $600-700 a week.
Why don't more people understand this, that you put what you need to put here?
Yeah.
Executives.
It's getting there. The right people understand it.
Yeah.
Some people just have like a loyalty to their local hometown. That's fine. It just determines, like, some people in life are not looking to have an outsized return. And so what I say in the book is, if you want to have an outsized return, play here. If you want to have a muted return compared to that outsized return, you want to have an average or below average return, then do it in your hometown. Or come here once a month. As an angel, I've only lived in Silicon Valley for 3 years. I did the majority a half of my angel investing when I was living in LA and coming up here once a week or 3 times a month for 2 or 3 days each time. So I was spending roughly, 8 days a month here, and whatever number.
You also say in the book, right? If you want to live somewhere else, that's fine, but you got to be here a bunch.
You just got to show up. You got to show up. Like anything else in life, you got to show up. You got to do the work. And the book is about doing the work. It's not a get-rich-quick scheme. It's a get rich, powerful, and smart, slowly scheme, methodically.
The other thing I love that you touch on, and then I'm happy to let you go, although I don't want to, but is how founders should treat their angels and their advisors. I thought that was a very interesting, A, that you'd go there, and B, the things that you had to say there. Could you shine a bit of a light on your thinking?
Yeah, sending a monthly update is table stakes now. I won't invest in a company unless they agree contractually to do a monthly update, and I will not meet with a company now in all likelihood. If it comes through a referred source, I might meet with them. People who are addressing me just over the transom, I'll reply back to most of them if they have something, that they've built. If they have an idea, I generally don't. But if they have something they built, I'll say, great, looks like a good start. Please put me on your monthly update, read chapter whatever in my book. And after you read that chapter, you will understand why monthly updates are important. And after 2 or 3 monthly updates, I may ask for a meeting. And so basically what I'm challenging people to now is, if you want a meeting with me, very simple, send me 3 monthly updates and have the chart go up, up, up. And then we're having coffee. If you can't make your chart go up, 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 just 10% month over month for 3 months, why are we meeting? I'm an investor in high growth companies. Your company is not high growth.
I'm not your
Why
guy.
should we meet? I'm not your guy. Find the person who wants to invest in ideas. Find the person who wants to invest in companies that are not in the Goldilocks zone. I'm looking for the Goldilocks zone. Not too cold, not too hot. Not so hot you have a Series A already. Not so cold that it's just an idea and there's like literally no pulse. I'm looking for a little pulse, a little sign of life. Could be 10 customers, could be 100 customers, could be 1,000 daily users for free or 100,000 users for free every day. Some number of utilization that shows we can have a conversation about the metrics and what you've learned from usage. If we can't have a conversation about what you learned from putting the product in the market, go to friends and family. Have your friends give you 100K to finish up, and they'll get a better deal than me. They'll get twice the economics, triple the economics. Good for them. Mazel tov. I'll pay double the price, but I'll be able to separate you from the 100, 200, 300 clowns who email me every day with their life story and 3 ideas, and how it's going to be $1 billion company. It's like, like that's just crazy people or enthusiastic people or everything in between. I can't tell. What I can tell is if you build a good product and you have some usage, I can tell if it's a good product or not. And I can tell if people love it. That puts us halfway to an investment.
Jason, is there anything else before we take our exit strategy here?
No, I mean, it really, listen, it means the world to me that you read my book. I will reciprocate immediately and read your book. And we are definitely in for a part 2. You got to come on my program after I read your book, and then we do part 2.
Well, first of all, that would be a thrill. And listen, I don't mean to sound like a fanboy, but I am not a journalist. A huge part of why I want to do Legends and Losers is to have the opportunity to have conversations with my heroes and people I admire and respect. I've loved the podcast for a long time. I love your style. I love that you tell people to go fuck themselves or whatever it is you feel like you want to tell them. And the book, and this is, let me say something about Harper, because of course we share a publisher, right?
Yeah.
I remember meeting with Hollis at Harper and her saying, listen, we only publish 12 to 14 books a year. And we look for books that we think are long-term classics. And sure, we care about short-term results, but really what we care about is if this book's a classic, then it'll do well over time. And so when I got contacted by Rachel there, I thought, okay, well, the likelihood Jason's going to write a stupid book is really low. But of course, you never know just because you're smart.
Never know. Yeah.
Right. And writing's fucking hard. And who knows, right? Maybe you didn't take it seriously. I don't know. What the hell do I know? Right. And then I got the book and it sat there for a little while. And I picked it up and I went, fucking A. Because we all need to stand on the shoulders of giants, right? And where I think where breakthroughs happen, particularly in business, are when somebody takes something that has been under thought about, under analyzed, and really puts it under a microscope. And we both know that when you start to think about what you're thinking and you try to break down, well, how do I do what I do? You make discoveries along the way as well, right?
It's a great observation. It literally is like the book to me has made me critically think for the last year and a half about what the fuck am I doing and how did I get so successful at this? And now, since writing the book, I've literally met with hundreds of people, thousands of people now in person who've read the book in the first month. And what my strategy for marketing my book is to just have 50 people and do dim sum with them. They buy the book for $30. I buy them dim sum. I wind up losing a little bit of money. They wind up paying full price for the book, but I autograph it. And then I sit there and talk to them. You know what happens? Those people actually read the book. Those people actually deploy the lessons. Those people actually tell their friends and they write reviews. So I've been on this whole thing where I just think that all the gamesmanship in book publishing where people buy their way onto the bestseller list and buy 10,000 copies of their books through these weird shadow organizations, I think it's all bullshit.
I think it's such bullshit.
What you want to do is just sit with the people who are your true fans and put coals. Every time I have 50 people that I sit and have dim sum with, I look at it like a piece of charcoal that I put on the fire. And I'm just like, you know what? One piece of charcoal doesn't seem like a hell of a lot. But if I do 50 or 100 of those dinners and you put 100 pieces of charcoal together and then you try to put your hand over it, that's fucking hot,
Yep.
right? One piece of
Yep.
charcoal I could put my hand over. You put 100 pieces of charcoal burning for a year. This book in a year, right now I've got 175-star reviews or something on Amazon. All I've been worried about is I just read every review and I just say, how did they actually get value from it? Did the book actually, was it worth their time? Because all these dipshits, are writing books to become subject matter experts. They've got it backwards. You should not be allowed to write a book until somebody, some group of people go, are you the best, most qualified person to write this book? No? Then fuck you,
Kind
give me
of
the,
fuck you. Right.
yeah, fuck you. Like, if I was in the first year of my angel investing, I invested in 5 companies, it'd be like, want to write a book about angel investing? It's like, well, I don't know dip shit about this. But in year 8, and I've got 150 investments, yes, now I'm ready to write the book on it.
I don't know if you have this in your show because the focus of This Week in Startups is a little different than Legends and Losers. But I've been amazed since we started Legends and Losers, Jason. We get hit sometimes multiple times a day from, of course, people trying to get on the show.
Yeah, that's a delete immediately. Don't respond.
Well, it's now getting to the point where it's very, very hard to deal with the inbound. But here's what I was surprised in the beginning. There were a lot of people who said, hey, I want to come on and share my business success story. Okay, great.
What's your success?
And their success is they made themselves a successful author, speaker, coach, podcaster.
Yeah, they spoke at a TEDx, which, by the way, if you spoke at a TEDx, you probably don't want to broadcast that. No offense to TEDx, but that's kind of like saying whatever. I couldn't get into TED.
Well, whatever. I don't give a shit. Yeah. But what I do know is, so a lot of these guys are in like leadership coaches and shit, right?
Oh, yeah.
So the leadership coach that I want to take coaching from is 4-star General Stanley McChrystal. Sure. So I'm interested in his book and having him on the show. Anyway, my point in all of that, Jason, is there's Eric Weinmeier, the famous blind climber and kayaker, was on Legends and Losers. And one of the greatest things he said is, the world doesn't need more bullshit.
So true.
And in a world where we are drowning with bullshit and there's a lot of business books that don't matter, I just really want to thank you because this fucking book, Angel, is a breakthrough. I've been doing this for 30 years. You taught me new things. You taught me things I knew, but that I should have more at the forefront of my brain. You taught me why my investments are good when they're good and why they're bad when they're bad in a way that I didn't have them in my frontal lobe. And I just think at a time where we need more entrepreneurship and we need more success and we need more startups, you've written an incredibly fucking important book because you give us all a template to start from and to innovate from and to be successful with. And Jason, this is a very, very important piece of work you just completed.
Oh, thanks, pal. I appreciate it. And thanks for having me on the program. And I look forward to reading your book. And I look forward to having you on my podcast, This Week in Startups.
It would be an absolute thrill.
This has been a blast.
Thank you, brother. We'll talk soon.
Talk soon, man. Peace.
Yeah, there he is, Jason. Now, if you know somebody in your life who you think would benefit or enjoy or be enthused about that dialogue, why don't you share our show with them right now? And I want to say something about podcasting. We're just a hair past our 6-month mark here at Legends and Losers. And today's dialogue, as with pretty much all of them, one of the things that I'm left with, having done this for a little bit now, is there's no other way you can experience that. So if somebody had written all that down, transcribed it, and turned it into a blog post, most of us, myself included, wouldn't read it. Maybe some people would, but I think the length of it would be a stunner for a lot of people. There's no radio show you can go on and do that because they're just not going to do that. The cost of airtime and all of those things. The TV, forget it. And I have come to a point, maybe it's just because I'm so deep into podcasting and listening to podcasts myself, where I find television interview shows are largely unfulfilling because you get an incredible guest like Jason on, by way of example, and maybe you get to hear from him for 3 minutes, 7 minutes, 9 minutes, 12 minutes at most. And so I guess my point in all that is podcasting is an amazing medium, isn't it? Because there's no other way for any of us to experience a deep, authentic dialogue um, with somebody like that than a podcast. There's just no other way before podcasting that was even possible. So as you could tell, I thought that was a great dialogue, and I think these dialogues are amazing, and I get off most of them and go, I can't even believe I get to do this. All right, One Life Fully Lived. Come join us in October 21st and 22nd October in beautiful Sacramento. We're going to have an amazing, amazing live event where we'll be working on dreaming, planning, and living our best life. You can find out more information. You can come out and see me there at onelifefullylived.org. And the other thing I'd like to ask you to do today is, if you could, please subscribe to Legends and Losers on iTunes. Subscribe to Legends and Losers on iTunes. We would like to thank the great state of Texas. Please donate what you can. HarperCollins Instant Classic, Play Bigger, How Pirates, Dreamers, and Innovators Create and Dominate Markets. Equity Directory, connecting startups to the talent and resources they need to build a legendary business. Our good friends at NetSuite, #1 and in cloud ERP. Come check us out on the Next Ready Business Tour. OneLifeFullyLived.org. Come see us in Sacramento. Our good friends at Project Relo, a nonprofit offering an extraordinary leadership experience with America's veterans at ProjectRelo.org. The smash new hit book from Jason Angel, How to Invest in Technology Startups. Timeless advice from an angel investor who turned $100,000 into $100 million. Pick up a copy. You will not regret it. The Front Row Factor, the awesome new book from our good friend and guest, John Vroman. Check it out. PursuingResults.com. They produce legendary podcasts, and this one too. Interview Valet. Podcast interview marketing. Podcasts are the way thought leaders get their thoughts out to other leaders. So be a thought leader. Get yourself on some podcasts at interviewvalet.com. Fathom, digital marketing that drives revenue at fathomdelivers.com. The great book, Never Split the Difference, from our friend and guest and fellow HarperCollins author, FBI negotiator Chris Voss. Never Split the Difference. A great read. The Unbreakable Mind podcast, one of my favorites, with our friend, the guy who tried to kill us, and guest Navy SEAL Commander Mark Devine. Unbreakable Mind, and the World Wildlife Foundation, because our planet and our wildlife matter. All right, we would like to remind you that this oddcast is a sole property of the Legends and Losers Oddcast Network, and we would love it if you shared the shit out of it with all of your friends. All rights do remain disturbed. This oddcast is produced in a studio that does contain nuts. Legends and Losers may contain forward-looking statements, backward-looking statements, sideward-looking statements, upside-down-looking statements, and completely stupid statements. Never jog near a prison. Hands up, chin down. Linda Carter is the real Wonder Woman. Don't forget, if you haven't changed your mind lately, how do you know you have one? Support your local angel investor. Thank you, Dandy Candy. And hey, Colin, this oddcast really ties the room together, doesn't it? Our deepest apologies today to Martin Scarelli, CEO of Herning Pharmaceuticals. Sorry, Martin, we just ran out of time for you. Thanks for tuning in, folks. We'll see you again soon on another episode of Legends and Losers.